Welcome to a Sunday night edition of Diamond Kings, the best YouTube baseball talk show in North America, if I don't say so myself. Our show is brought to you by the leading behind-the-scenes blog as part of the Sports Kings Media Network. My name is David Whitlock from Houston, Texas, and I'm definitely representing tonight as my Astros went 5-2 over the week. They won a series from the A's, and they won a series from the Blue Jays. Those are two contenders that are now going to have to scuffle to get back in their races. Not bad at all. I'll be your panel moderator tonight, and we will be talking the trade deadline fallout. That all went down Thursday with much more fireworks than we had anticipated, so lots to talk about there. And then we'll talk a little bit about bean brawls. There's been a little situation there in Arizona with Pittsburgh and the Diamondbacks, so we'll look into that. And then we, of course, joined the baseball community in mourning the passing of Atlanta Braves TV broadcaster Pete Van Wieren this week. Fans of a generation of baseball remember his work on TBS when it was the Superstation. It seemed like every night there was a Braves game on my TV on basic cable. And certainly his loss is affected. And so I'm going to introduce my panel moderators tonight. I'm going to start with Michael Prosser from Florence, South Carolina. He's a lifetime Braves fan. And welcome to the show. What are your thoughts on Pete?
Well, obviously, this is a tremendous loss for anybody that the real team of the South. It's a really tough thing. I remember growing up down here. It like clockwork, 7:05 Eastern Time or 7:35
right.
Eastern Time. Your butt was in front of the television with a sweet tea and fried chicken or a steak, depending on what day it was, and you were watching the Braves, and you got to see Pete Van Wieren. That was always something that I'm going to remember, from my younger days. Of course, when the Superstation TBS kind of shifted, and I don't understand why the Braves games aren't televised like they used to be. But I guess I can understand. Damn you, Ted. But obviously it's a tremendous loss, and I actually got a chance to watch the tribute video that they had for him at the TED. I got a chance to see those highlights, and it was moving. I had some hair standing up on my arm. I'm not gonna lie to you guys about that one, but thoughts and prayers are with it.
Yeah, certainly prayers with him and his family. It was a loss, and we were talking a little bit before the show that, of course, Harry Carey Jr., also known as Skip Carey, passed away, which seems like very recently, but it was 6 years ago. So that was two guys that called those games. You're right. I don't know why they stopped broadcasting those games. Every night I'd watch them. I'd always draft fantasy players on the Braves just because I knew that I could get to see them play every night, even here in Houston, because they're broadcasted everywhere. And then, of course, now WGN's also moving away from Cubs coverage. So I don't know what's going on, why they're not showing enough baseball. But to introduce our second guest, Kelvin LaPierre from Arkport, New York. How are you doing tonight, Kelvin? Welcome back, by the way.
Yeah, it's good to be back. One show suspension kind of sucked, but it's nice being back. Send condolences out to the family down there in Atlanta. It's kind of another crappy circumstance to start a show, losing another great mind in baseball, but it's part of life. We got to move on. Thing with the TBS thing is I believe Atlanta is actually working on their own TV deal like the Yankees have.
Right.
Working on their own network. So they're working on that. So that's why you're not on TBS anymore, because they're working on their own deal, I do believe.
Yeah, the work works out better than the Astros deal and the Dodgers deal, both of which got awesome TV stations that have no coverage whatsoever. They're trying to charge too much, satellite distributors, etc. And we'll talk a little bit more about broadcasters later in the show, kind of just reminisce about who our favorites are and any other thoughts in that regard. So, but let's now move to the trade deadline. It was a very, very busy Thursday. It started with John Lesser moving first thing in the morning. It ended with David Price moving right before the trade deadline. You even had the Houston Astros and Miami Marlins essentially swapping prospects, younger players. So we'll go back to Kelvin. General thoughts on the trade deadline. Do you have any winning teams that really were winners, teams that were losers, who didn't make a move that should have, who made the wrong move? What we think about the Yankees' moves, trading with the Red Sox, any of that?
Well, if I watched your show right, I believe you guys said that there really wasn't. You guys didn't expect to be anything blockbuster trade wise on the show before, and I wish I could have chimed in and said something because I knew there was going to be a huge trade that was going to happen. Because Lester got pulled from his start a day before his start, and all indications were he was going to be traded. It was just a matter of where and who was coming back to Boston. And then I didn't see Johnny Gomes getting traded with that in that package, but sending Cespedes back to Boston, the guy who I go back and watch one of our previous shows from, I believe, 2-3 weeks ago, I picked Cespedes to be the guy I would build my team around in draft number 1, and that's who Boston has now got their outfielder, their power hitting that's going to destroy that monster, and they're the winners, and so are the Oakland Athletics to a certain extent because they're not going to sign Lester in the offseason. They're not going to have the money because they don't spend money. So the Red Sox are winners because of what they got back. They got Cespedes, and they got another prominent young pitching prospect, I think it was, back in the deal. And they're looking to be a young team next year, 25 years old. They'll make them the youngest team in the league is what their average age is going to look like next season. And then you have the Yankees going out and making minor moves. They designate Brian Roberts for assignment after acquiring Stephen Drew from the Red Sox. And this is the first time the Yankees and Red Sox have made a trade since 1996. So it's been quite a while. It's been 18 years since they last made a deal. And now you have Stephen Drew coming over, who the Yankees wanted to go out and get but weren't willing to give up that first-round draft pick to sign him as a free agent. And now you bring him in, he's going to be your second baseman. Then they went out and they picked up the third baseman from San Diego. And but we picked up another one too. Can't remember his name, because I haven't watched any games since the deadline because I've been working. But he's going to play right field, the second guy we acquired. Then we picked up Esmil Rogers off the waivers from Toronto. He's a starting pitcher. Every pitcher we picked up so far via trade or off the wire is somehow magically pitched well in the Yankees uniform. Chase Whitley called up. He's 3-2 with a sub-3 ERA. We have the one guy just pitched the game we lost against Boston. He lost 3-2, and then McCarthy is 3-0 in his 4 starts as a Yankee. So we're looking all right. But the loser is definitely Philadelphia, not getting rid of anybody on that team. You're an aging team and you don't trade away anybody. I mean, Marlon Byrd's asking price, I heard, was 2 future prospects plus a current player ready that can go right now. And who's going to give that up for an aging outfielder? I mean, yeah, the Yankees desperately need a right-fielded bat, but I wouldn't trade what they want for him. Cliff Lee hurt himself again. Doesn't look like he's going to potentially even be able to be traded. And then you have Howard still there, Chase Utley's still there. Anybody's still there. They're the biggest loser, but I'm not going to say they're a total loss yet because I'm going to wait till that August 31st waiver wire trade deadline that's going to happen. I think that's where you'll see Philadelphia make 2 or 3 trades to get rid of that and bring in young talent.
Yeah, definitely good analysis. I can't disagree at all with the Red Sox really winning. Sometimes you only judge the receiving teams of talent as the winners. Okay, let's talk Tigers, A's, that sort of thing. But the Red Sox, they instantly flipped a lot of aging veterans for younger guys in their prime. They're ready to reload next year. We don't know what's going to happen with John Lester in the offseason. Is he going to re-sign with the Red Sox? That's open that he could do that. I agree. He's probably not going to sign with Oakland because of his salary demands, but I'm sure his agent will field all offers and he will get a great deal this offseason. So, Michael, your thoughts on the trade deadline? I was a little underwhelmed by the Braves. They kind of swapped. They got a middle infielder from the Cubs and a spare arm. They needed a bigger bat. So your comments on that and any other trade winners or losers?
Well, forgive me for not leaping for joy about Emilio Bonifacio, bad back, and everything. No, I didn't think that was anything to write home about. I'm still not crazy about the lefty. Who, when Kelvin told me about it, I was like, yeah, who is this guy? Apparently he'd been playing in the majors, all season. But, again, it's the Cubs. Nobody cares. Having said that, Boston made out like gangbusters. They really did. Getting a guy like Yoenis Cespedes, coming back for that. I still don't understand why Oakland, just couldn't give up, a couple of prospects, top prospects, to get John Lester. And, Johnny Gomes coming back is kind of, like, oh, hey, yay, Johnny Gomes is back. Ooh, fanfare that's, going to be all right. But Boston moves Andrew Miller as well, which is somebody who I was hoping Atlanta would go after. It would have been a much-needed lefty reliever, especially one of that caliber. They get a guy named Edwin Rodriguez in the return from Baltimore. He may be Baltimore's third best prospect, but he's not looking like it this year. I don't know if this is, granted, he's still, a younger guy. It's Double-A ball, but when you have a 3-7 record with a ballooning 4, I think it just ballooned to like 4.35 ERA in Double-A, and you're supposed to be the third best prospect in the system. I don't know. I don't know what that's saying about either you, the team you're on, or the prospect pool in Baltimore. I mean, when you've got a guy like you've got guys like Dylan Bundy, Hunter Hayward, which I think is the guy's name, who is actually now done for the year. Not Tommy John, actually. If you can believe that, it is a pitcher with a non-Tommy John-related elbow injury, but it is going to keep him out for the rest of the year. You think about all these young pitchers that Baltimore has, Kevin Gausman, and you get a guy who's the third-ranked prospect, and he's, having a crap year. So I don't know if you could eventually call that one a wash for Boston or what, but if this is going to be an interesting offseason for Oakland, because let's say they don't end up winning this whole thing. When does the whole Moneyball thing start to run its course? It's going to be about time for Billy Beane to start spending some money. Why not spend it on John Lester? Why not spend it on John Lester? I mean, yeah, you get Jason Hamill, who hasn't really been all that great. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, he's looked horrible. About as horrible as Jake Peavy has out west.
It's been awful.
Which, is another move that could come out in Boston's favor. It's high time they start spending money. The Moneyball thing has run its course. Brad Pitt played you in a movie. You had the late Philip Seymour Hoffman in there. You had what we think is Jonah Hill. He's lost so much weight, he doesn't even look like Jonah Hill anymore. Pretty soon, Jonah Hill's going to turn himself inside out if he loses any more weight. The time has already come and gone. You've got your own movie about it. Everybody knows about it. There's a book and all this other stuff. Spend some money, man. I get it. You want to be frugal. Now you have the team to compete. You don't have to be frugal anymore. You can go out and get guys. People want to come to Oakland now. Plus, you're about to get a new stadium eventually. It was one of those moves, and Dave, you're going to appreciate this because you are a I don't want to say old, a wily veteran in the ways of baseball.
I'll take that.
When I had to work, but I was able to TiVo the trade deadline covered that the MLB Network had. Another spot-on job by those guys. Harold Reynolds described that trade as just a good old-fashioned, old-school trade. Here's my best player. Here's your best player. We're going to swap these guys. It's like my baseball card with this guy's name on it for your baseball card with this guy's name on it. It was an old-school move, and I've alluded to this before, and I'll say it again. We either thought this was going to be the slowest trade deadline or it was going to have fireworks. And boy, did it ever.
Yeah, we got good fireworks indeed. Oakland's in an interesting situation because I think the Moneyball thing, and even Brad Pitt, Billy Beane's admitted that's great to win you 95 games, but it's not great when you have to match up ace against other big teams because that strategy is kind of neutralized. So we're going to have to look at whether this is a turning point. Are they going to be the type of team that tries to go after free agents? What's going to happen with that stadium? Every now and then they sword rattle that they might move. Maybe they'll move to San Antonio with the Raiders. Who knows? I doubt that. a new commissioner's coming in, he might have some ideas on what he will and will allow, like letting them move to San Jose, for instance. But Oakland is positioned well. I do think the Tigers really made the best move with Price. They were right there, kind of a little lackluster this year, not any better than previous years when they couldn't win it. And then suddenly, with a guy like Price at the front of that rotation, everybody slides down one spot, and they'll be a force to be reckoned with. A couple other things. I'm going to introduce Michael to James Russell. He's the guy you just got, the left-handed pitcher. You might remember a relief pitcher for the Texas Rangers, Jeff Russell, in the 1980s.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's his son. And James Russell is a University of Texas guy. So he has my wholehearted endorsement as a crafty lefty, and he will make you proud unless he doesn't. The other thing I'll comment on a little bit.
We shall see come October.
That's right. Well, hopefully you find you needing him in October. Get past those Nationals. I'll comment a little bit on the Astros trade. Of course, they parted ways with Jared Cosart, who is actually from a high school not very far from where I live. It's actually our rival high school. So he was a local guy, real popular when they brought him here, but things weren't really developing with him, and so the Astros decided to go ahead and move him on. And Kike Hernandez, who's kind of a fill-in player, probably a fourth outfielder at best. And they got back Colin Moran, the number 6 from the 2013 draft, I think it was. Number 6 overall, so to go with Mark Appel, the number 1 overall. And then Jake Marisnik, a reasonably developed outfielder at 22, 23. I don't see Marisnik being much more than a solid defensive center fielder. It's a tool for them to then move Dexter Fowler probably either this offseason or in the next season. But overall, reviews on that Astros trade is good. We're still rebuilding, finding pieces. We're obviously not settled yet. But it was a great trade deadline, and I do wish, Kelvin, that you had been here last week because you could have balanced some of the force that was pushing. I do remember Michael saying it would be one way or the other. I had definitely predicted Lester would go. I didn't think Price would move. I thought at the end of the day the Rays would make the playoff push this year, and I was wrong. So
the only reason Price left is because the only reason Price got traded is because of that Lester trade. If Detroit doesn't make a move, after what Oakland does, then they're probably not going to win that series, even though Oakland does struggle in the first round. But you have a much better pitching staff than they've had in years past going into this postseason with the best record. Most likely is what they're going to end up with, the number 1 overall seed in the AL. So they're going to face a Detroit team or a struggling AL East team in the first round to get to that second round. So their pitching is better. If Detroit didn't do anything, then Oakland goes in the odds-on favorite in the AL, but now that they got Price, that balances things back out and makes it who's going to hit, what pitcher is going to have the worst inning in every game. There's going to be one pitcher in every game that's going to have one inning that'll be horrible, and that's who's going to win the game because the other pitcher's not going to have it.
And Oakland.
And when you look,
go ahead, Michael.
And when you look at it, I just thought about this. The Los Angeles Dodgers, actually, I would consider them a winner, even though they really didn't make a move, just based on the fact that the Jake Peavy trade that the Giants made to kind of catch up to the Dodgers is seemingly biting them right in the rear right now. He hasn't looked comfortable. He's looked out of sync with everybody on the field. I don't know if this is going to be one of those things where he may have to grow into this. It might take a couple starts. But how long is that going to take? I mean, do they have the time? I mean, this LA team is stacked as it is already. Yeah, they just lost Paul Maholm, but as much as I love Paul Maholm's not really that much to lose. No offense, Paulie, I love you, but you're not going to be one of those make it or break it type guys. You're, a 4th, 5th starter at best. And they didn't move Matt Kemp, which, everybody was speculating, they're going to move Matt Kemp. They're going to try to get this. No, they kept that team intact. It's an already strong team, and personally, they look even stronger because they didn't make a move.
Yeah, and they're getting healthy, and Clayton Kershaw is the dominant pitcher in the game.
Don't even talk to me about that. Oh, God.
Back to the A's, I mean, they're in a dogfight in the American League West. They may not win the American League West. The Angels are a hotter team right now. The A's may find themselves in a one-game playoff and out if like Kelvin said, it just so happens that a John Lester has an off inning. He has one off inning, and they're playing a strong team like the Blue Jays with a strong pitcher and they go off on him, you never know what's going to happen. Well, we got to move on off the trade deadline. One more thing. Mike, what you got?
Oh, yeah, the Angels actually, were seemingly looking stronger. They brought back C.J. Wilson off the DL, and then he goes and gets shelled. So, I mean, that's going to be an interesting – that's probably going to be the most interesting race in the last, few months of the year.
And you think about it, and the Seattle Mariners are in the wild card position as well, and you think about a one-game series facing a guy like, obviously, Felix Hernandez, but even Iwakuma has been completely dominant. So
and getting Austin Jackson to
lost
that
a
as
barn
well as
burner
another good
today.
bat.
Freaking 1-0. Iwakuma lost 1-0 today off a solo shot in the first inning. That's just a
a leadoff shot in the first inning.
Nice, and then another 54 outs with nothing. All right, we'll move off the trade deadline. Let's talk a little bit about the situation that happened in Arizona over the weekend. Paul Goldschmidt got hit by an Ernesto Frieri pitch, broke his wrist. I mean, the Diamondbacks are out of it, but he was their main guy, so now they're probably vying for number 1 overall pick next year at this point. And they were clearly frustrated at the end of that game. I think it's McCarthy, their coach, was going after Russell Martin and talking, and McKay, I think is the coach's name. But there's some jaw in there, and then lo and behold, the next day, Andrew McCutchen comes up in the 9th inning of a game. Now, there were some guys on base, and the game wasn't settled yet, but it was Randall Delgado just drilled him right in the middle of the back, kind of like your guy for my guy, your star for my star. The most telling thing for me was when he got ejected, he just turned and walked off the field. Like, yep, I expected that. That's what I do. I hit guys. I don't know if it came from Gibson or not. You guys are both hockey fans. This is kind of in the game police itself, which I think to an extent it should. I think at some point that if you hit intentionally my guy, I have the right to hit your guy. I don't think that was this situation. So we'll start with Michael this time. Your thoughts on what transpired, who was right, who was wrong, how long should the suspension that is definitely coming for Delgado be, etc.?
Well, it turns out the only thing that there's more than just hot temperatures out in the desert. Tempers are hot right now too. I mean, I went back and I watched the situation unfold as it did. I personally don't think that the Goldschmidt hit was intentional. It does hurt. I've always been a Paul Goldschmidt guy. Next to Freddie Freeman, I think he's arguably the best first baseman in the National League. Of course, you have to throw Anthony Rizzo in there as well now. Excuse me with the hiccups. But, DJ Pauly G, when DJ Pauly G gets up to the bat, it's gone. Like, there is no, I'm going to, it's gone. I've always liked that about Paul Goldschmidt. Obviously, it's a tremendous loss to the Diamondbacks, despite the fact that they were completely, they've been out of it since, last April, maybe. I mean, it's been a while ago. And then, the whole Delgado situation. Randall Delgado was one of those guys that they got in the Justin Upton deal. And Chris Johnson, let's not forget that. And Delgado was a fine pitching prospect in the Atlanta system, but that was a logjam there. So somebody had to go, and it was unfortunately Randall Delgado. Most Latinos, if not all Latinos, if anybody's ever watched the show Modern Family, Latinos have a hot temper. You turn a Latino with a 95-mile-an-hour fastball on some dude's bare back, what do you expect's going to happen? Do I think a little birdie told him to do it? Off the record, yes, on the record he'll say no, but off the record, he totally did. Kirk Gibson's played the game. He knows all about it. He stares Dennis Eckersley down in the face and, blasts one in the seats on 2 hobbled legs and watches cars leave. This guy's got ice water in his veins. I mean, he knew what he was doing. And Delgado did too. I think, he's probably going to get, if he gets suspended 2 games, it's one of those, they're just trying to be David Price and Big Papi, and it's not going to work. Pittsburgh is a game and a half out of first right now. They don't need to be worrying about this. Arizona's looking for, attention. They shouldn't be instigating this. They should be worried about, okay, what are we going to do in the offseason? How are we going to fix this team? Because obviously getting Martin Prado and the guys we've got right now are not working.
Yeah, one thing that surprised me is maybe not surprised. I think it was some good restraint by Pittsburgh. That didn't empty the bench. You didn't see that stupid,
Right.
hey, we're going to stand on this side of home plate. You stand over there. Let's all flex our muscles.
And give credit to Clint Hurdle for that one. Clint Hurdle, since he's got
Right.
hired as manager, he has brought instant credibility to this team on the field and off the field. He was always a stand-up guy in Colorado. He was very, everybody was held accountable for what they did. He was a player's manager. Just from what I understand, a genuinely good guy from the people that I know who live in and around the Pittsburgh area that have had a chance to meet him. Genuinely good guy. And I give him full credit for that one. And, kind of shame on you, Kirk Gibson, for, doing something like that. Shame on you.
I think he's a little bit desperate, Gibson is. His team is underperformed, even with the low level of talent they have. And so, I mean, it still is a little bit of toughness in the team, but that's not the way to do it. Kelvin, what are your thoughts on that situation? Did you see the play, and what's your overall thoughts on the way the game polices itself like this?
Well, it's how it should be. It should be police itself. But as far as when you're, 15, 18 games out of first place, you're not going to play for anything. Yeah, I get it. It's your star player that gets hurt. He breaks his wrist. He's more than likely done for the year, according to your GM and your coach. Come out today, say, yeah, he's most likely done for the season. We're not going to confirm that, but that's the way it looks right now. He's done for the year. And then the next day in the ninth inning in a game that's not even decided yet, you're going to have a guy go out there and plunk their MVP in the back. I mean, I get it, but when you're out of it and it was an inadvertent, I'm going to throw inside and try to brush you out the plate, not intentionally throw. You could not intentionally throw at somebody's wrist. It is too small of an area to throw at. You're throwing inside to brush him off the plate. You're not throwing to hurt him. You're not throwing to hit him in the hand. You're not going to do that throwing inside. You're just throwing it inside, not aiming for his body part. I'm sorry. It makes no sense. And if Gibson told him to go out, if he told his pitching staff to go out there and hit McCutchen in the ninth inning, because I'm sure he just told whoever it was the day before after that game, we're going to hit whoever comes up in the ninth inning, no matter the situation. We're just going to plunk McCutchen if he comes up in the ninth inning. It's not something you say during the game because there's too many cameras around. He'll get caught, and then he'd be screwed because we've seen all these cameras now catching all these silly things that people do at ball games and ball players do, and you see it all the time. So I'm sure it was said in the clubhouse either before the game or after the game the night before. And on the suspension-wise, you got to look at the Machado incident where he threw a bat intentionally out
Allegedly.
there. It's probably gonna. It's more than likely going to be a 5-game suspension. I'm looking at probably 5 games for being intentionally and no care in the world. Didn't show remorse for doing it. Just walked off the field like, oh, I'm all big badass because I went out there and hit a guy in the back because I was told to do it, throwing 95 miles an hour. So, needless to say, it's that this situation, it's not necessarily the greatest thing for the game to have it police itself when Arizona is this far back in the day before that game. That pitch was not in no way intended to hurt anybody or hit Goldschmidt whatsoever and break his wrist. I'm sorry. That's just one you let go, and it's common sense baseball. It's pitches get away from pitchers, and it's an accident, and then there's the part where you literally are throwing at somebody with intent to hurt, like he was to McCutchen. He was trying to hurt. He was intentionally throwing at him, and that's what baseball's trying to get rid of, is the intentional throwing at a player, because one slip of your hand and it's hitting him in the head and his career could be over.
Yeah, and we've seen that happen before. I mean, it hit McCutchen right between the twos on the back. I mean, he didn't throw it at his head, so I'll give him, I guess, some credit for that. You want to maybe avoid the guy's knees, but there's no place in the game for this. I'd like to see the suspension be something like 10 games to send a message. I think I agree with you, Kelvin. It'll be 5 games to match the Machado, which was another clear situation to me. Maybe not to Michael, but a clear situation to
Allegedly. The bat slipped, allegedly.
After what had happened to him the previous inning, getting pushed down, or previous game, I can't remember what it was. But baseball doesn't need star players being thrown at. That's not good for the game. They don't want to see those guys get hurt. Hey, I grew up a Jeff Bagwell fan. He was always getting hit on the wrist to the point that he had a giant piece of armor because the way he stood at the plate. He stood in there. He stood tough. He kept his wrists tight. And I don't know, looked like Goldschmidt stepped into the pitch and it just broke in on him. So that thing happens, and I agree with both of you guys. The first one wasn't intentional. No place for the intentional retaliation. So we talked a little bit earlier about Pete Van Wieren and his broadcasting legacy, particularly among the generation of the 1980s and 90s when cable was prevalent. I'd like to ping each of you guys for who are some of your favorite broadcasters that you've seen over the years. Could be a local guy, could be a national guy. Trying to move real quickly. We're running out of time on the show, but just overall thoughts on some of the WGN guys, TBS guys, your local guys, national guys, and we'll flip it back and start with Kelvin this time.
Well, I'm going to obviously go local. Phil Rizzuto is my guy, man. I get up,
nice one.
watching this. I was a little younger, and so I like all the Yankee classics. You hear his voice, and all you hear is the crack of the bat, and it's holy cow! That's a moonshot. And then I like Vin out in L.A. He's been a really good character. ESPN wise, I love when Harold Reynolds did ESPN commentary for the games. He was energetic about it. Aaron Boone's really good. Joe Buck, I really wish he would get off of the broadcast booth for baseball. It's just that bad. I had to throw in the bad one to go with all these good ones. Thank you, Joe McCarver, for finally retiring and getting out of there to stop antagonizing him with his antics about how he hates the Yankees. But no, Phil Rizzuto is my guy. Love him. His holy cow will always live on. John Sterling for the radio broadcast. No. Not going to see another one like him for the Yankees. Bob Shepard's another one for the Yankees. The only one that still does Derek Jeter's number. Now batting number 2, Derek Jeter number 2. Another guy I'm always going to go and fall in love with. That's all I got, man.
Yeah, no, good stuff all around. I think I agree with you about Buck. I think his act is kind of worn thin. I mean, they've been doing the games for 2 decades now, plus you get in the NFL season.
Yep. Every Cowboys game.
And the amazing thing about Vin Scully is, I mean, he was doing games in Brooklyn. He used to play in Brooklyn. Vin Scully was, how long has it been since the Dodgers have been in Brooklyn? I mean, that's just how old he is. And then, as I toss it to Michael, I'll point out the Phil Rizzuto thing. He is a fan of music and music of my taste, and of course he was on that Meatloaf track on the Dashboard Light or something like that.
Paradise by the Dashboard Light from Bat Out of Hell.
And there's the Phil Rizzuto section.
1976, I think it was.
Yeah, and it's ridiculous because there's 2 outs, nobody on in the 9th, and then there's a suicide squeeze, so that makes no sense whatsoever. But we won't go there. We'll move on to Michael. What are your thoughts on broadcasting?
Oh, God, now I got to go listen to that album from start to finish again. It's something that I just do. That's a fantastic album, by the way, fans. If you have not listened to Bat Out of Hell from start to finish, do it. Forgive me for, disappointing you, Chi Sox fans. Whatever the hell that guy's name is, that guy's awesome. Because if anybody else could put it on the board, yes, that guy is incredible. Just the sheer enjoyment. And I always like announcers, be it in baseball, football, basketball, hockey, soccer, whatever, that put emotion into the game. He's one of them. Vin Scully is a legend. You can't not like Vince. I mean, you can't hate Vin Scully ever. I don't care if you're, a diehard Giants fan. You like Vin Scully. He's just that good. Of course, anybody with the last name of Carey is obviously going to have a special place in my heart, especially Harry. Yeah, I always found it funny that Will Ferrell took, Harry Carey to a whole another level and looked exactly like him almost, which was kind of scary a little bit. John Miller, Joe Morgan from ESPN, John Kruk, always, bringing insight to the game. I always liked playing the baseball games with Joe when John and Joe were doing the commentary. And then you had, of course, John Kruk bringing in his 2 cents as well. It was always nice. Always learned a little bit more about baseball. Even playing video games, you can learn a little bit more about baseball just by listening to the commentary. If who would have thought? Gary Thorne in Baltimore.
Oh yeah.
Gary Thorne in general is a broadcasting god. It seems the guy can do anything. In sport, you name Gary Thorne. Gary Thorne could announce college, curling, and I'd watch it just because Gary Thorne is there. He's that good. I feel like I'm missing somebody. Like I really do. Like I feel like I was supposed to be saying somebody else, and I'm not. No, that's about it.
Yeah, all right. Well, if you think of them, we'll have a wrap-up segment. But just one guy you guys didn't touch on that I personally just do not like that others do is Bob Costas. I find him arrogant, big-headed, and
You don't like his ties?
Nobody liked Costas.
Yeah, and my wife would agree with me. She hears his voice from upstairs and says, "Turn that off. I hate him." Of course, with the Olympics, you're stuck with him. One thing you mentioned the Harry Carey impressions. Who is it? I think it's Ryan Dempster does a really good dead-on Harry Carey impersonation. I think Dempster's now moved on to MLB Network, just having pitched last year. But Google that, Ryan Dempster, Harry Carey, and you'll see a hilarious interpretation. Another guy that I like, he used to do Astros games, he's moved on to the Cubs now, is Jim DeShays. He's got a dry sense of humor and is really good analysis. And we miss him down here in Houston, but he moved on to obviously a little bit bigger market and WGN. So catch him if you can. And then a new guy that I've seen lately that I really like is C.J. Nitkowski. You might remember him as a crafty lefty with the Astros and Diamondbacks and some other teams. And I'm kind of a fan of C.J. Nitkowski. I'm seeing some of his work on Fox Sports 1 in particular. And so when you catch him next time, pay attention to that. So final question of the day is our non-baseball question as usual. And let's talk preseason football is starting. We just had the Hall of Fame induction. Do you guys get into preseason football? I presume everybody's a football fan, so I'm just going to assume you're a football fan of some sort. Do you even watch these games? Are they important to you? Everybody seems to be, like if Johnny Manziel sneezes, it's a news item. You're seeing Ben Roethlisberger contract talks. Down here in Houston, we've got a lot of Arian Foster question marks and Jadeveon Clowney updates. It just seems like media overload to me, but do you watch all 4 games, the first game, the third game? We'll go back to Michael. We'll start this one.
Well, it depends on who's playing. Personally, for me, being a Panthers fan and being a devout Panthers fan, yes, I watch all 4 games. Mainly, though, to see the rookies. Because I know the first, that first snap, Cam Newton's going to maybe throw, an out route for maybe 5 yards, and he's going to sit down. He may score yards and then going to sit down. That'll be it. Then, Derek Anderson's going to come in. Woo-hoo-hoo. Nobody wants to see Derek Anderson play anyway. With the rookies, everybody's going to have their eye on Kelvin Benjamin here. Coney Ealy's another guy, especially with Frank Alexander serving a 4-game suspension and Greg Hardy's erroneous, egregious, any other E word that means something bad, his off-the-field issues, and with him being franchise tagged, Coney Ealy could be a guy that comes in and replaces him. Guys like that, I'm probably going to watch at least one Cleveland Browns game, something that I never thought would ever come out of my mouth, just to see Johnny Manziel get his ass kicked. That is the only reason.
Nice.
I want somebody to take that money sign that he does and shove it right down his throat, just like the kicker did in the Arena Leagues that did it after he hit that field goal. That was funny. I thought it was hilarious. I knew he did it out of spite. It was great. I loved it. But usually I'll watch preseason anything just because I'm a fan of the sport, except for preseason basketball and preseason hockey because they don't televise preseason hockey really. Even the summer league, I'll catch Winter League games in baseball every once in a while. They're on the MLB Network, split with there it's a little bit tougher because of the split games. You might be catching 5 guys here on this team, and then everybody else that's good's on the other team playing in Sarasota or whatever. But when it comes to preseason football, yeah, because that gets me a leg up on everybody else when it comes to fantasy season.
Yeah, I wouldn't put too much stock in fantasy numbers on preseason football. It is an exhibition.
It helped me with Julius Thomas, the tight end from Denver.
Yeah.
I picked him up without watching him in preseason because I knew he was going to be good because he got Peyton Manning throwing him football.
So
I
Kelvin,
started and we got 26 points.
what are your thoughts, Kelvin, on preseason football? You got your Cowboys hat on, or are you anxious to see how Tony Romo throws and any other rookies there, or RG3 or anything?
I've already been watching Tony Romo throw. He's looking pretty solid. His strength is back, which is good. But I watch preseason football, and I'll give you the reasons why I'm watching it this preseason. The new rules that were put in place where they're actually going to enforce defensive backs and wide receivers not being able to touch past 5 yards. Previous 4 or 5 seasons, you've seen them get away with touching about 10 yards, then they stop contact, then they'll throw the flag after 10 yards. They're really enforcing it. The NFL has sent referees to every training camp, and during their practices, they're throwing flags, and they're making sure the DBs know, the wide receivers know, coaches know, everybody else knows that, look, we're calling it strict. It's going to be 5 yards, and that's it. Your wide receiver, you extend your arm fully after 5 yards, or if you even give a brushback shoulder, you're getting called for a 5-yard penalty, and they're doing it right there. They're telling you now. They've given you 2 weeks notice. Buffalo, you've now had 2.5 weeks to get it together. Giants, you've had the same amount of time. We're going to find out in about 15 minutes how much you guys have learned about this 5-yard no contact rule after 5 yards. Another thing I'm looking forward to, the extended extra point is now to 35-yard field goal instead of a 19-yard field goal. Got to see how that plays into effect. Does that make a difference whatsoever? It's going to take the whole preseason to determine that, but in my guess, it's not going to have much effect whatsoever because if you go back to 35 yards, it's still a high percentage of those are made. I believe it's 88.9%. So basically 89%, anything from 35 in is made. So more than likely, you're going to see it extended again next year, probably to a 45-yard field goal where it goes down to about 76% make percentage. So those are 2 reasons I'm looking forward to watching this preseason. Also looking forward to seeing, I may not be a diehard Bills fan, but living in New York, living only an hour and a half away from the Ralph, I'm looking forward to seeing what E.J. Manuel and Sammy Watkins do because I was high on E.J. Manuel when they drafted him. And then when they traded up to get Sammy Watkins, I wanted to see what those two can do as a dynamic duo. I know Goodwin's not starting tonight, neither is their starting tight end, and there's a couple other players that are not suiting up for Buffalo tonight. So you're not going to see their whole offense, but the media was told that E.J. Manuel will be playing deep into the first quarter. So I'm kind of skeptical about that being their first preseason game, why they would do that, but I understand it because I think that they're trying to implement more pass plays because they were like last in the league last year in passing downfield. So I think they're finally going to open up the playbook for EJ to throw it downfield so he doesn't have to throw these 10 to 5-yard dump passes like they tried all last season.
Yeah, I agree with it all. I think it's fun to watch. I could watch about a quarter and a half before I get bored. The one thing is I'm pretty sure that all the teams still charge like full regular season prices for tickets to these games. So it's kind of like you got to buy that game to get your other 8 games.
Not if you're Dallas. It's all included in your season tickets.
Yeah, that's our postseason. That's right.
Yeah, they got NFC Championship game tickets in their season package. Yeah, we're going to make it that far.
Against that happening in Dallas, and you gave a shout out to
if we make it that far, Jesus.
Yeah, no, I haven't win a playoff game in the last decade. You gave a shout out to Marquise Goodwin, another Longhorn, and a really good guy, track athlete, Olympian. So I'll pile on that. Other than that, I appreciate your time, boys. From the Sunday night edition, we'll be floating this show all week. We encourage you to like our show, share our show. We have a good time doing it. We hope you have a good time watching it. I'll be on vacation the next week and a half, so I may or may not be here. But if there is a show, I know for sure Kelvin and Michael will be involved. Thanks again. Enjoy the NFL preseason, and we'll see you next time.